It is April Fool's Eve, and green haired, pale skinned liberals are celebrating by ripping up diplomas and protesting Teslas. Yes, they're apparently ripping up their diplomas in protest of Colombia complying with the Trump administration's orders to deport non citizen student visa holding terror sympathizers. But do you ever notice that the people who do crap like that, well, they pretty much all look the same, like they haven't eaten protein or seen the sun in about 5 years? But it's a real chicken and the egg question here. Do they look like that and then decide to become deranged liberals, or do you become a deranged liberal and then start looking like that? It's a real mystery. But folks, as fun as it is to make fun of these people, and yeah, it is fun, that doesn't mean we can afford to get complacent, because guess what? Their votes count as much as ours do. And while I do believe those specific weirdos are the very slim minority, I am heeding the warnings of folks like Scott Pressler. If mega voters only vote when Trump is on the ballot, we are screwed. Screwed. Let me bring in the Ben Ferguson Show host, Ben Ferguson himself. All right, Ben, a lot to get to today, but I want to start off with what you think tomorrow's going to mean, okay? If Democrats do better tomorrow, then the polls of their party would indicate they're going to take about 20 victory laps, and we're going to have to hear that actually their poll numbers are higher and everyone hates Trump and the Trump agenda, and then some Republicans are going to maybe stop voting the way we want them to because they're going to get concerned. I think tomorrow is a big deal. How big of a deal do you think it is?
Look, it is important. And this is one of the things I think Donald Trump understands now more than he did in 2016. You got to have the majority of Americans behind you. Otherwise, you worry about your own party. Republicans that are kind of rhinos, that aren't hardcore conservatives or MAGAs, and Democrats right now are trying to figure out where is their place now after this mandate that just went to Washington, D.C. That's number one. Number two, look at the anarchy that the Democrats are going back to, and they're hoping it's going to work for them again. Whether it's the Tesla day of protest all over the country, which was a flop on Saturday, or, hey, we're just going to go after conservatives like Elon Musk and try to get people fired over Signalgate, which, again, the new CBS poll numbers are out. Tomi said it had no impact on Donald Trump's standing. So I think right now they're in disarray. I think eventually they're going to get it together. They're better at staying together and figuring it out than Republicans have ever been. And so you are absolutely right with your caution, which is we got to pay attention to what their plan is. We got to pay attention to how quick they can put this back together coalition. They're just better at it than Republicans are. They always have been. And so they understand winning. And look, when you lose Republicans, the rhinos that undermine Donald Trump and conservatives are your biggest threat to everything with Doge and everything Trump's trying to do. So we got to keep our own team in line. And how do you do it? You got to have 50 plus 1% of Americans behind you.
See, my concern is that this amazing coalition that Donald Trump was able to build in 2024 was a coalition of people that may have never voted Republican ever in their lives. And you know what? Maybe they didn't even vote for other Republicans. They just voted for Donald Trump. Now, I'm worried that those people are going to show up at some of these other elections, whether it be the midterms, which is comparatively larger than what we have going on tomorrow. But I'm a little concerned. Some of these special elections, I'm afraid that some Republicans are going to be like, you know what? I already voted for Trump. Trump's in office. We already got Republicans in the House and the Senate. I don't really need to do it. It's not really important to me. It's not really sexy to me. I will show my support for Donald Trump by wearing a MAGA hat, and that's it. And that complacency is what I'm very worried about. I don't think it will indicate that people do not support the president, but I think it will indicate that they're getting complacent. But Democrats are going to take it as they don't support the president. So how concerned are you about this?
Very, very concerned, because when you win, that's when you see complacency. And when you get beat, that's when your team usually wakes up and is like, I'm tired of losing. I want to win again. It's a perfect example of how Donald Trump was able to reincarnate himself and then win the presidency back, right? You miss what you used to have. And so I agree with you. I think there's a lot of first-time voters for Trump that may not even realize that there are these special elections or midterm elections that are less than 2 years away. I can't believe we're talking about them already, but it's a reality. You got to talk about this. And this is where you come down to messaging and Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I think, does understand. And a great example is Stefanik. You know, when he pulled Stefanik's name from going to the UN last week, and the part that made me laugh, Tomi, I'm sure you saw this as well, was how Democrats are like somehow trying to spin this into like a controversy. Oh, he's had to pull a nominee. No, Donald Trump can count. Stefanik can count. They understand that there's a very slim majority for Republicans in the House right now, and it wasn't worth the risk in a special election. And then all of a sudden, maybe you lose that seat and then you lose power in the House. So they did the right thing. I also think that tells you how focused the team is on these elections. And look, when Donald Trump needs to show up, I think he's going to show up. When there's a place where he feels like we need a victory or a place that we could lose, I think his team is smart enough to do it. But again, you have an angry, psychotic, Marxist, communist, socialist, Democratic Party. They're no longer Democrats, Tomi. They are Marxist, socialists, and communists masquerading as Democrats. They understand that not everybody is into that right now. That's who they are, and they're ready to win, and they're going to fight hard. And by the way, they don't play by the rules either.
You're right. And with that whole Lee Stefanik stuff, I mean, again, the Democrats saying, oh, look, I guess they know what they're doing is not popular. It's to your point. No, if we have somebody we can put in the UN, a lot of Republicans and conservatives don't really think that UN is worth much of a crap anyway. So why would we put somebody there when we can have them and have the number? I mean, that's just logical. It's realistic. It makes sense. So I didn't see that as a sign of weakness whatsoever. I thought it was a smart strategy. And in fact, when all of these great people serving started going into the Trump administration, I think even Speaker Johnson was like, wait a second, like we need these people here, because people forget you can have your guy in the White House all day long, but if you don't have the numbers, you can't get his agenda done. He can't do everything by executive order. So important points that you're making here. I think that what I find so interesting is that Democrats are just leaning in to the most ridiculous people in the party. Now, Jasmine Crockett, Texas, God, she does Texas so proud. But Jasmine Crockett says a lot of stupid crap. And you don't even really have to resurface clips because she is just on a daily basis saying such stupid things. But this resurfaced from about 9 months ago, and this is her attacking Congressman Byron Donalds. I'm sure you've seen it. It's gone re-viral. Let's take a look at the racism.
If we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you? I'm not really sure, what it is.
Well, but you couldn't even be married to a white woman under Jim Crow.
Correct. And it took Joy to call him out. So I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? What are you saying? He just out here, I feel like they give him his talking points and he's like, yes, massa, I got it.
Well, that was, if you were to look up the definition of racism, I think that clip would be pretty high on the list there.
Yeah.
So, I thought a sign of really coming a long way in terms of unity and forgetting race was interracial marriages, because to me, that's a great signifier that people are not focused on color and they're not tribalized by their skin color. But Jasmine Crockett apparently has a real problem with it. And I don't think that clip is playing well for her.
It's funny, Tomi, there are two Democrats that I would actually give to right now. It would be this one and AOC, because they are the gift that keeps on giving. And it's such a great thing to watch these clips go viral. You and I usually see them early because we eat this stuff 24/7. But then when she comes out and now is like a new leader, she's like kind of a new AOC of the Democratic Party right now. I'm like, let's just remind people of who she is. She hates a black guy who disagrees with her on politics and says, oh, you're basically a slave to the Republican Party and your white wife. That is racism 101. But I actually think it's good for us to have people like this out there in the Democratic Party, because this is who they are. This has become the mainstream. AOC is a leader of the party. She is a leader of the party. The fact that she's on The Breakfast Club, which is a massive show that has a large audience in this country, and they think she's the best guest for the Democratic Party's talking points, please have her on every day, because I do believe now that the American people are paying better attention than ever to what is being said by the left. And instead of the fear mongering, a great example of that is what happened last week. And I referenced it with Signalgate. The American people showed that they actually care more about killing terrorists than they do about who's on a Signal chat about killing terrorists.
Yeah.
That means that people are paying attention now more than they've ever paid attention. And so with Crockett saying things like this, I think there's a lot of independent voters. I think there's a lot of minority voters. I think this offends Hispanic voters, Asian American voters. The list goes on. When they see a Democratic Party that also treats you this way, that the only way you're a good black person is if you vote for what we tell you to. And if you don't vote for what we tell you to, you lose your blackness and you're a slave to the Republican Party. I think it's offensive to a lot more people than they realize, and keep doing it. If you're the Democrats, please. Thank you. I'll send you money.
And also, Jasmine Crockett, we know, has gone to incredibly expensive private schooling and institutions. Yes. She is a person born into privilege. So the fact that she plays this card is disingenuous. It's so phony. And I think that she thinks she's fooling people. It's not fooling many, though, if they just take a quick look at her backstory. I don't think
look at her backstory and look at her speeches from when she was in college and out of college. I'm pretty sure it was Rhodes College in Memphis where she went, if I remember correctly. And you look at the way that she presented herself, the way that she talked. She clearly is pandering now, or she was pandering then. You can decide. I don't care. You choose. But if you look at what she says now compared to what she said just a couple of years ago, she is a drastically different person. Like, it's a 180. And so I think people should look at it. I love it when they dig themselves their own hole. It's like, hey, which one are you? Are you this person? Or are you this person? I mean, you look at videos of you and I for the last, I don't know, as long as you and I have been doing this, we've known each other for a while. We're pretty consistent in who we are, what we believe in, what we say, what we fight over, what we're passionate about. The Democratic Party now, they're all over the place. And it's whatever they think is going to hit on this day on the Breakfast Club. And then if they're at another event that's not the Breakfast Club, they can turn into a completely different person.
Yeah, but it's not convincing. You know who's someone else in the Democrat Party, though, that's trying to turn into a completely different person? Kind of going the other way from Jasmine Crockett, so at least he's smarter, but it's Gavin Newsom. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, I'd rather have Jasmine Crockett because at least the stuff she's doing, she's playing a part and she's playing a role, but I don't think she's electable. What Gavin Newsom is trying to do is make himself electable. And he was on with Bill Maher, and he's saying the Democrat Party is so toxic, the brand is toxic, we need to talk to people, I don't like cancel culture. And even Bill Maher, who's actually a supporter of Governor Newsom and not a conservative, is like, hey, but all these things you're saying, like, look at California, and people would say that you're the poster boy for a lot of these things. Like, I don't know, kids or parents being left in the dark about their kids changing their pronouns at school. And Gavin went on to say that, you don't want to be turning in the student to their own parent. So I think Gavin's going to have a really steep hill to climb if he wants to convince people that he's somehow a moderate. But do you think it's doable for him?
I do. I actually think that Gavin Newsom is a, and hear why I say this, so that I'm not taking it out of context. I think he's probably one of the most brilliant chameleons of the Democratic Party. He understood he had a problem. He understands he wants to get to the White House. He understands he needed a massive pivot. He starts a talk show, starts having on MAGA World, tries to act like he's a guy that's wanting to reach across the aisle when he's the same guy that had no problem locking people up and turning people in during COVID. And then he had his parties during COVID while no one else could gather for funerals or see their loved ones who are dying in the hospital. This is an extremist who's always been an extremist. And we have to be careful as conservatives that we don't allow him to become Gavin Newsom. I actually think this is a 2.0. I think this is like version 5 or 6 of Gavin Newsom. He's slick. He's as good as Bill Clinton back in the day. They called him Slick Willie for a reason. He is Slick Gavin. He's brilliant at this. And I do think he is a threat to this country because of what he actually believes in. He is a hardcore government first guy. You don't have real rights. You do what I tell you to do, and we dictate to you. Look at California. The regulations, the taxation, the fact they're talking about turning parents in with their kids on these types of issues, transgender issues. This is a radical leftist that has a really great smile, great hair, great appearance, and the Democrats are seeking someone like this. So we have to fight him with the facts, and we can't let him get ahead on this.
Ben, have you gotten the invite to be on the Gavin show yet?
No, I figured you were going to get there before I was. So, I'm waiting.
So I got a bone to pick with Gavin for many reasons. Gavin Newsom, I used to live in California. Actually,
Yeah.
to the day I moved to Tennessee 5 years ago today, and I fled Los Angeles, California, in the reign of Governor Gavin Newsom. But Gavin Newsom is well aware of who I am. Gavin Newsom actually follows me on X. So my question to Gavin Newsom is, hey, where's my invite? I would love to be on the Gavin Show, and I have a couple questions. And two, to my knowledge, I haven't watched all the episodes. I haven't watched any of the episodes. I've only seen the clips. I don't think he's had any female conservatives on his podcast yet, or any females
I think
in
you're
general.
a perfect nominee. You
I would
should
love
know.
to.
I think he's actually more afraid of people like you, especially a articulate woman of the right, a conservative. And here's why. So much of what he's done in California has been attacking women and families. And so I think he's afraid of someone getting in his grill. You look at the first couple interviews, they were a little bit awkward, but kind and friendly. And you're probably like me. If you went in there, let's go. I'm going to bring your record and I'm going to put it to you, and I'm going to let you try to defend it, and I'm not going to let you off the ropes. I'm not coming in to be mean, but I'm not going to let you be someone that you actually aren't. You would walk in just like I would. I would just go look at his tweets over his lifetime and go, you tweeted this, and you did this, and you passed this, and you treated this, and now you want us to believe you're not that. And that's the reason why I think he's very careful on who he selects right now.
Yeah, he is, and he knows that he needs to appear more moderate. But if you look at California, it's anything but. So best of luck to him on that. I want to talk about something that I know people are just so excited to talk about because it gets people so titillated on social media. Tariffs. The majority of the American people, they don't even fully really understand tariffs because it's in the weeds for a lot of people, right?
Sure.
But we've got Liberation Day coming up on April 2nd. Trump didn't want to do it on April 1st because people would think that it was an April Fool's joke. So originally he said that these tariffs are going to be reciprocal. Whatever you charge us, we're going to charge you. Now he's backed off of that a little bit. He said we're going to be more fair to them than they have been to us because we've been ripped off. We're not going to be, as harsh. The markets are reacting. I'm not one of those people that pays a ton of attention to the markets, this and that. I think that it all ends up leveling out. But do you think this is going to be a problem for the president, at least in the short term?
Look, it could be, but I also think he got way ahead of this and talked about this on the campaign trail, and he knew that tariffs were going to be needed to get things in check. That's why he was so clearly talking about it. He did a half hour on it back in August during the campaign, and so he understood the power of tariffs. If you've ever spent time with Donald Trump, and you have, and I have, he loves tariffs. He's talked about this back in 15 and 16. He thinks it's a guy that it's a way to have the art of the deal come to reality. It's leverage. And he also understands that America can handle a standoff when it comes to tariff for a much longer period of time and weather the storm than Mexico or Canada or many of these other countries. You look at the 10% tariff, for example, on China early on, and that's going to be the baseline. Why? Because China does currency manipulation. So they actually use their currency and change it so that the 10% in essence disappears by the time it gets to the consumer. But then he said, all right, if you're going to do that, we're going to need to up it on some things. You look at the automobile issue right now. Why is the president doing this in layman's terms? Because he's saying too many cars are manufactured outside the United States of America. He's saying, I am pro-American worker. Am I okay with some prices of foreign vehicles popping for a little bit so that cars are then built in America again, that you're putting together these big automakers like they did in Mississippi with Toyota and Nissan and Mercedes-Benz in Alabama. We've seen this work before, and all of those places, those manufacturing places, are still running right now at capacity. You look at Blue Oval in Tennessee, for example, with the e-trucks and Ford. Those are examples of things in your home state where if you have these tariffs, they're more likely to work and excel. And again, employ Americans. So yes, I do worry in the short term that the American people might look at this and go, I don't like it and I'm done with it. But let's also go back to something that was very simplistic recently. You look at egg prices. Donald Trump gets elected and what happened? Egg prices have come down significantly. Gasoline prices have come down significantly. Cost of transportation has come down significantly. We're seeing that, yes, there could be a little bit of pain, but then we get the new Trump normal, as I describe it. And I'm riding with him on this one. I think you could see these markets react in the short term. The media spin it up. But at the end of the day, Do you support Donald Trump and his policies? And everyone remembers what life was like under him, with an incredible stock market, low cost of goods and services, extremely low unemployment, the lowest unemployment in history for African Americans, Asian Americans, and women in the history of this country. That was all brought to you by Donald J. Trump. So I would tell the American people, let him do his thing. It's all about leverage. He's not insane. He understands trade wars and he understands negotiations.
He does. And I think that the key here is trust the process, but they have to follow through. They cannot go halfway, because then it will look like a failed endeavor. You have to just go. And in some cases, you got to bite the bullet a little bit. But I think more than anything, not only bringing jobs and industry back to America, but I think this is, to your point, the art of the deal. You're not going to rip us off anymore. So if you want to continue to rip us off, we're going to play the game too. And guess what? Like he's been saying for the last couple of months, which I love, is you don't have the cards. You don't have the cards. All these other countries don't have the cards. We have the cards. So sometimes in order to make radical transformations that have lasting, wonderful benefits, you have to have a sting at the beginning, but you have to let it play out. Because if you don't and you stop halfway through, it's like stopping a surgery halfway because it hurts a little bit. You're not going to get the benefit. So I say trust the process, trust this president. It will play out. I have to ask you about a couple of things going on in Texas. So this is in Dallas, but you're a Texas man. I know you care about this state. We saw, and this is important to me because a lot of my friends are in Dallas, right? We saw this Bachelorette that was attacked in Deep Ellum, which is not a great area of Dallas, by the way. When I lived there, 9 years ago, Deep Ellum was like the up and coming area. It was being gentrified. And then now it's just, apparently it's awful. But this bride-to-be, her face is completely shattered. Obviously, we know Houston, where you are, has an issue with violent crime. What can you tell us about what Texas is doing to address some of this? Because people don't expect it in Texas, but there are some gnarly places in Texas.
Yeah. Look, there's two Texases as I describe it. I lived in Dallas for quite some time. And unfortunately, Dallas as a proper is liberal. And you've got liberals that are running it. And then the outside part is extremely conservative. You look at Houston, where I am right now, the same exact thing. You've had a lot of woke DAs. You've got a lot of woke police chiefs, a lot of woke people on the city council and mayors that get elected in the core of the city. And then the suburbs are hardcore conservative. The rest of the state is conservative. But you look at what happened, this young lady in Deep Ellum, and it was in I say broad daylight, meaning there's a lot of people around, right? There's a lot of people there when this happened. There was a lot of people thinking to help her. The police were there in a matter of moments and were yelled at to come over and help. But I also think this goes back to the issue of lawlessness. And for far too long, people have been able to get away with these types of crimes. They've been able to get away without real prosecution, even when they're caught. No accountability when they are caught. That is a huge problem. And so I look at this as another example to these liberal cities. Look at what you're getting when you vote these woke DAs in and you put these woke mayors in. This is what you're going to get in your cities. And what ends up happening is people end up staying in the suburbs and new cities pop up that are bigger because people are saying, I love Dallas or Houston or San Antonio or Austin, but I can't handle the crime in the proper of those cities. So I'm going to get out to the suburbs. We've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it in New York City. All over the country where these woke idealists are in office and in charge, we see this, and we got to stop it. And I hope that what you witness now in Texas is you have a real throwdown on this type of behavior.
Yeah. Atlanta, same thing. I mean, they want to bust off Buckhead and just make it its own area because they're like, we don't want to deal with this. But just look at the people that are in power in these areas, to your point, and stop voting that way. If you want to be able to enjoy the actual city, because that's where the good restaurants are, that's where the shopping is. It's coming out into the suburbs, but people want to be, in the heart of things. But unfortunately, it's too dangerous in a lot of these places. So I hope Texas is able to figure that out and maybe vote in some great people. Jasmine Crockett represents, I believe, the South Dallas area. So there's an opportunity there. Okay, last thing I want to talk to you about is something that I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure if it's a joke or not. Donald Trump hinting at a third term. Okay. Now, I think he made a joke about it. He even said something, I believe, to the effect of, like, I'm going to run as vice president under JD and 28 and all this stuff. Yeah. Now, I think it's a joke because I think he likes to troll the left. I think he likes to watch them freak out. But then there's some accounts where people are saying, oh, no, like, he's not joking. So do you think it's a joke?
Troll. This is a
troll.
joke. It's 100% a troll. He's sitting down with the mainstream media for this interview, and he just wanted to screw with them. And that is exactly why I love Donald Trump, because he knew they were going to take it and they were going to set their hair on fire, and they were going to go out there and he's a dictator and a tyrant. He's never going to leave office. And all of that was going to happen. And he says it. And if you've been around him, for people that haven't, like, you can tell when he sees an opportunity just to mess with either you or someone else in the room. He is a jokester. He's actually really, really fun. And he's sitting there doing a mainstream media interview. He's just screwing with them, and they get gaslit instantly when he does this. And so, yes, it is clearly a joke. If you're smart enough to understand Donald Trump and have a decent IQ, you should know he's trolling the media here. And so for Donald Trump, I actually think it's hilarious. Good on you. Keep doing it. Keep messing with them and let them set themselves on fire mentally.
Because they'll spend several days talking about this. I'm just waiting for them to bring it up when they're on one of these panels. And see, he's already said he's going to run for a third term, and all this. And that's what I think is funny. And I think that he is doing this for the comedy of it all. And I enjoy it because they fall for it every time. And then they just spin in circles. And you know what? If you're looking to distract from what might be somewhat of a difficult time with the whole Liberation Day tariffs, I think the best way to spin them in a circle is just say you're going to run for a third term and just let them lament on that for a while. I think it's great. So great to talk to you, and I hope to see you on the Outnumbered couch one of these days very soon. I always enjoy our time there as well. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. Love your show. Congrats on the success, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Folks, I hate to be a storm cloud, but if Republican Brad Schimmel loses the Wisconsin Supreme Court race tomorrow, it could have devastating ripple effects on not only that state, but our nation. If you're in Wisconsin, you cannot afford to sit home. It's time for Final Thoughts. I know it might be hard to get jazzed up about a state Supreme Court election, especially if you're not in Wisconsin, but I'm going to need y'all to pay attention to this. There is a reason this Badger State Supreme Court election has become the most expensive judicial race in state history and possibly in U.S. history. The election is tomorrow, and it's no April Fool's joke either. Conservative Judge Brad Schimmel is taking on liberal Judge Susan Crawford for that open seat, and here's why it matters. First of all, this is the first major election since Trump's victory last November. So if Wisconsin wants to show it supports the president's agenda, the best way to do it is to get out and vote. But this election will also decide the ideological control of Wisconsin's high court. We have a chance to flip it conservative, which will have major implications for decisions on abortion and voter ID. But probably most importantly, congressional redistricting. Don't take it from me. Hakeem Jeffries said the quiet part out loud.
In Wisconsin, that's a 50-50 race because we know Wisconsin's a 50-50 state.
Yeah.
And we have a strong Democratic candidate. Whoever wins is going to determine who has the majority in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Why is that important? Because there are gerrymandered congressional lines right now in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 50-50 state, as I mentioned, but there are 6 Republicans and only 2 Democrats out of an 8-person delegation because the lines are broken.
Right.
And as soon as possible, we need to be able to revisit that and have fair lines. The only way for that to be even a significant possibility is if you have an enlightened Supreme Court. And so, I think that's an incredibly important race.
If Brad Schimmel loses and that Supreme Court seat goes to Crawford, the maps will be redrawn and Republicans stand to lose 2 House seats going into 2026. Yes, this is very important stuff if you give one crap about the mega agenda. It could all be stopped dead in its tracks if this Wisconsin Supreme Court election goes the wrong way. So Wisconsin, we need you to turn out. It might not seem as sexy to vote for a state Supreme Court race, but if conservatives only vote when Trump is on the ballot, I don't think I need to tell y'all this. We're never going to win an election again. 2024 will be our peak, and we can't afford that. So please get out and vote for Brad Schimmel. We cannot afford to lose. And those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern. Catch full episodes of the show on Fox Nation whenever you want. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.